Hello, everyone. It's good to see you all. It's Charlene Lee, and I'm excited here today to be talking about data. Data, which is the foundation for what AI does for us. So there are a lot of questions, a lot of myths around how we use data, what data is needed to make AI work. So I want to talk about a lot of those today. So to get started today, I would love for you to share where you're coming from. Always good to see the diversity of people who are joining today. And then also, please share a little bit about how you are managing data for AI. Again, everyone has different types of data that they're working with and using. And I would love to hear how you're thinking about data, how you're using it, how you're accessing it, how do you give permissions to it, who can use it. So today is all about data. All right, so let's get into this. I do have some slides and they are available at this location. And I realized that I did not get this all set up. So let me just do a few things here. All right, so I just wanted to see if, okay, right. So here are the slides. This is where they're going to be available. If somebody could share them into LinkedIn too as well. I can't get access to comment on LinkedIn, so someone could do me a favor. I would really appreciate that. All right, so a couple things here about data. One of the things that I will talk today are a bunch of myths. And so these are the 6 myths that I want to go through and talk about. Thank you, Jay, for being here, first of all, and for sharing the slides. Really appreciate it. So a couple of the things about data is that, again, I'm going to go through each of these myths, but there are things like you need perfect data, you need good data. And you hear this all the time. We need our data to be AI ready. What does that mean? How ready does it need to be? How much data do you need? So, and does it all need to be clean, so to speak? And also, do we need to have it all in one place so it's easy to access, etc.? And then I also want to talk a little bit about some of the other myths around how to organize around data. For example, that once you have AI, you don't need data teams. Not true. That data governance is bureaucracy. And then also, again, we know that this isn't true, but once you set it up, you're set. So we'll talk about each of these myths as we go through, because I think it's so important to understand what you can do and what you can't do with data. So what are the possibilities? What are the realities of what you need to do? And I know a lot of this through the research we've done, but also thanks to my co-author, Katja Welsh, who has been a chief data and AI officer for a gazillion years. So again, deep experience at very large global organizations. So a lot of this is again, drawn from her hard-earned experience is what I would call it. All right, just before we get started here, Jay has this great point. AI ready data for sure is a myth in my experience. Take some adjustments to make it work. So we'd love to hear more about that, Jay, and hear from other people too as well. What has been your experience in working with data? How do you think about accessing your data? How do you think about getting it, quote, AI ready? What's the reality of what you are seeing? So please, this is a great opportunity for you to be a part of the conversation. Please share how you are managing your data. How are you approaching it? How do you govern it? All the things related to data for AI. All right, so let me get into the presentation here. So the first issue is that we need to, this whole myth of you need perfect data to start. Again, so many organizations say we have to clean it, we have to organize it, we have to centralize it before we can use it for AI. And that's just not true. So AI can generate a lot of insights, even when it's imperfect, even when it's unstructured, especially when it's unstructured, and even if it's messy. And what's really important is that it understands the context of where that data comes from, how it was gathered, how it's being used, so that even if it's incomplete, even if it has a lot of noisy, messy stuff in it, if you know how it's incomplete, if you know how it's messy, you can give AI that context and it can work around a lot of that. So what's really important is knowing what data matters the most to you. how is it going to impact your decisions? So again, AI strategies all around the value that you're going to create with AI. And then after that, what is the data that you need to be able to make those decisions, to get those insights? And then you get the data, however imperfect it is, and you start working with it so that you understand how it's not perfect. You understand how it's not structured the right way, and then you can compensate for it. So the key here is to make sure that it's over and working over time. All right, so here's some great, again, I love all the comments coming in. Jay, I'm just going to keep going back to you because you have some great comments here. What Jay does is we make sure the data we put into LLM is private to us and what we have collected. So that's a great point. Do you have rights to the data? Is it something that you can use? And also when you're putting it into the LLM, being able to make sure that it's walled off and that it's not being used to train the model is a really important step to take. And then Jay also has us make sure that the headers are very descriptive. Also found that converting CSV files to PDFs make a big difference. And so this is a really good point that sometimes the models have a really hard time understanding tables, spreadsheets, CSV files. So when you put it into a PDF, the headers are fixed and it doesn't get messed up and moved around. So I have found that to be the case also, that if you can do this conversion from a spreadsheet into a PDF, it helps, quote, cement the data so that AI can actually read it. And so this is an interesting thing, is a lot of times people think that data has to be in spreadsheets and needs to be structured in that way. And the reality, it's not. Anything that is digitized in your organization is data. Anything that AI can read in any format can be data. So let me give you a couple of examples of what is data. So you can have text-based data. We know this. These are like reports, they have documents, even emails, the transcripts from all of those wonderful meetings that you have every single day. That's data. You have structured data. This is what we normally think of as data. We have records that sit in our CRM systems. We have inventory. We have financial data. Again, typically very structured data. And then we have all the unstructured data. This is that messy data that, how do we make sense of this? So it's images, it's videos, sensor data. If you have Internet of Things, sensors going around, it's all that data that's capturing everything. And then it's a mother lode of information is all the customer interactions that you have. Extremely messy. They go all over the place. Again, all sorts of different problems being collected in many different repositories, from chat transcripts to social media engagements. And then you have all that behavioral data, just tons and tons of data around click streams, around call logs, all the transaction histories that you have. So all of that is data. And we need to think about if there's a particular business problem that you're trying to solve, and it could use some of those things to help you solve it, then get your hands around it to say, well, how could we use this information? How could we use this data? So even though it's extremely messy, for example, customer interactions, if it can help you understand and improve the engagement, and that's going to be extreme value to you, then go and look at that data and start getting your hands around it to say, how can AI use this? How do we need to think about that data, and what kind of shape is it in? And what's the minimally viable data is what I think about it, that you need to understand to make it work for your AI. And here's the thing, is that you think that having structured data is you're going to be all set. But if you're in a larger organization, the way the data is named in one set of data versus another may not be the same. So do you even have things named the same way? Again, this is why context is so important. You want to understand where that data is coming from, how is it being used, how is it being labeled, and your definition of a customer may be very different than another group's definition of the same customer. Is it a prospect? Is it somebody who has bought? Is it somebody who has bought within the past 6 months? So again, all of these things are up for definition. And that's the heavy lifting you want to do, is to understand, again, not to have all your data be perfect, but the most important data that you want to have be in a usable form. And the only way you can do it is to start using it and then refine it as you go along. All right, so a couple other comments here. Let's see, Alex has a great question, but if you don't clean it, there'll be biases. That's a great point, Alex. And one of the things that you want to know is, how do you know what biases are in there? So again, as you start working with it, one of the things you want to do is understand, how is this data biased? But you won't know until you start working with it. So start working with it, understand the bias, adjust the algorithms, adjust the way that your model is using it to take into account that there's bias in that data. Instead of trying to clean the data, the AI can actually understand that there's bias in it and then compensate for that. So it's a not perfect turnaround, but the thing I'm going to emphasize is that you want to be optimizing for speed. And hold on for just a second. Sorry about that. So you want to optimize for speed. And the market is moving too fast, technology is moving too fast. So while you want to be careful, you also want to take that data, start working with it, understand the bias, compensate for that, understand how it's not perfect for you, understand and compensate for that, and then start using the data. The biggest mistake I hear is that people saying, oh, we can't get started with AI. Our data is not in good enough shape. We need to clean it. Okay, but start working with it so you understand, when is it in good enough shape that you can start using it? When do you have confidence that the information coming out is good enough to help you do the work that you need to do? And you won't be able to do that if you're trying to get to perfect data, clean data along the way, because your definition of clean and perfect is going to be immeasurably difficult to get to, that you're going to wait a very long time, and the market and your customers and the competition are just moving ahead. So that's a key point I want to make. Don't try to get to perfect and clean data. Get to good enough data that you can do something with it. Understand the biases, the limitations of what that data can do, and then over time you will get better and better at understanding and making sure that data is in good enough shape that you can use it and feel confident about the outcome. All right, let me go on to the next big area, which is that more data is better insights. And that's not necessarily true, because I want to emphasize that the number one thing you want to do is go after your high value data. What data do you need to be able to make the decisions, to run the analysis, to inform the AI, to make the decisions you want it to do the work that's really important and adds business value to you? So what data is it? And go after that data. And then at the same time, you want to understand what data is high risk. What do you have to have really good governance around? This is your financial information, any personally identifiable information about your customers or your employees. You want to be able to really have really high governance on that and understand what that is. And then the last part is having the most usable data. Can AI extract information out of it easily? And so this is the big difference. You may have a project that is of great strategic value, and the data may not be that usable at this point. So it may be difficult to do, but it will be worth going after that data, understanding it, being able to extract it out of the systems and be able to use it in a way. So it may not be all of the data, but it's really important data. It's high value. There may be high risk. You want to mitigate the risk. You want to remove all of that bias and then go after the most high value data you can. So we make this mistake that thinking that AI needs a lot more data, because we hear it all the time. We're running out of data to teach and to feed these models. And the reality is, what you want to have is the really high value data to solve the very specific problems that you are trying to identify. If you've heard me talk about AI strategy, it is all about making sure you're using AI to solve your biggest, most hairy high value business problems that exist for your organization. Sure, you can go and do productivity gains. Sure, you can use it to write social media, but is that where the highest value is for your organization? It's probably not. And it probably involves some type of bespoke data that's custom to you. So go and understand what those key value driving strategies are for your AI applications, and then find the right data, the high value data, mitigate the risk of using that and make sure that you are using those things. All right, want to make sure I have my slides here. Want to go on now. And let me just check and make sure there are any comments. Okay, no comments or questions at this point, but please ask your questions and add your comments about how you're approaching data, what you have found worked, what's been frustrating, concerns that you have around data, and we'll try my best to address them. So this has been an interesting thing around the fact, this myth that all of your data needs to be in one place. And one of the most interesting things I'm seeing right now are companies like ServiceNow, Salesforce, SAP in particular, are coming out and saying, instead of trying to put all your data, pull it out from all parts of your organization into a massive data lake or data ocean, you're going to build a data mesh. And you're going to have some sort of orchestration or some type of AI sitting here alongside your large language model that says, given this query, where does that data reside? Where does that data live? And so you're going to create a network where, again, each area is going to go and serve up the data that you need to solve that particular problem. So the old way was to build these large centralized data lakes because the data couldn't be used in all of these legacy platforms. And then there was a lot of bottlenecks and it was really high cost, security, and moving data from one place to the other. And now the data mesh approach is very different. The data stays where it is and it's owned by the team. So it's sitting there in your marketing and sales databases. It's sitting in your operational information with SAP. It's sitting over there in the financial areas. It's sitting in your supply chain inventory data. So it sits there. And then AI can go and access this data and piece it together, understands what's good, how that data can be used, what the risks are, and then you can do something with it centrally. So this decentralized access to data, I think, is a really key turning point. And you need a little sort of AI model in the middle there that says, given this question, where does the data reside? What can I use? Where can I go get it? What kind of shape is it in? Provides that context back to the AI, back to your model, and then it can, again, take that all into account. Now, this is highly scalable. It's much more flexible. And very importantly, it's fast. So if you can get access to your legacy data in those systems and have them in a way that the AI can go and access it, bring it out, understand what it's looking at, then you can use it. And this is the big difference, I think, that I'm very excited about. That there are these out-of-the-box solutions now that help you access your existing data in whatever shape that it's in. And it puts that layer again of context and understanding so that your AI can use it and understand it. So it reduces the need to, quote, clean your data to make sure it's again in a shape that AI can use. And now what instead it's doing, instead of trying to clean the data or move data around, it's leaving it there, it's understanding what it does, and just makes it, again, usable for the AI. All right, I want to move on and talk a little bit about how teams are working together. I want to make sure I didn't skip one. Yep, I got it. So number 4, AI needs human expertise. So this is that myth that once we have AI running all this data, we don't need data teams anymore. And that's totally not the case. We still need people to define the questions, to build the models, to especially define the objectives, especially with agentic AI coming along. What are these models meant to do? What are the data points they need to have? So, well, AI can do a lot of the heavy lifting when it comes to using data. We still need this human expertise to be able to manipulate the data, to understand it, understand the limitations, and very importantly, to understand and interpret the results and apply our sense of ethics. Because just because you can run the data doesn't mean that you should. Just because you can do something with it, maybe we should stop and say, should we be doing this just because we can access it? So I think it's very important for us to make sure that as we're developing this, to make sure that we still have that human element inserted into the ways that we're building our data models, building our data access, governing the data, so that we have, again, that very strong human-centric approach and thinking about how we're using all that data as we're deploying AI. All right, I want to talk about governance, because when you have all of this data available, it is, again, I talked about high risk data. And so you want to put governance against this. And yet when it comes to governance, you're probably like a little part of you is going like, it's getting the wiggies, because uh, governance is not a fun word. Nobody ever says, oh, I love my governance model. Love how we govern data. Just love spending time on this. And the reality is that we oftentimes put way too much governance on top of our processes and especially data, which slows progress. But at the same time, we need to have governance, because if we don't have it, it leads to chaos. So the key is finding that balance of just right governance. I call it Goldilocks governance, not too much, not too little, just right. So the thing that I think is important is that you need to have very clear ownership of who owns this data. So wherever it's sitting, who is responsible for it? Who is accountable for keeping that data safe, keeping it organized, for making it accessible, and then define the policies that revolve around that very sensitive data. Who has access to it? What can you do with it? And making sure that's communicated, and that you have a system that tracks and sees how it's being developed over time. Because it's such an important thing to say, how do we not only track what that data is doing and understand who's using it, but also how are we improving it over time? And that itself is really important learning. And so somebody needs to be responsible for maintaining that data, but also for improving that data over time. All right, so let me just go and see a couple of the comments. Jay, sorry I gave you the wiggies too. Governance too. Again, it's one of those things. I absolutely love governance, because I believe that governance allows us to go fast, because if it's clear what we can do and what we can't do, what the guardrails are, then we can go as fast as we can within those guardrails. Also, we have this comment from Jay that meta data models that utilize and validate forensic use cases. I think you're talking about these data models that sit on top of all the existing models. Absolutely. You have to build those things that understand how this data is fitting together to be able to understand it, and again, especially validate whether the results are coming out in a good way or not. All right, almost at the end, watching the time here. The last one here I want to talk about is that data is an ongoing process. My last point before was that you need to improve it over time. And it is so true. It is this long, winding road. It is a messy process to get to the place where AI is being able to use your data in a really good way. So it may be okay from a minimally viable data point of view, but how do you improve it? So as you're putting together your data structure and your data governance, put also in place how you're going to invest and adapt it over time. So I take this point very seriously. Invest in adaptability and flexibility. You have probably heard me talk about how important it is to build flexibility into your data stack, into your tech stack for AI. So that includes the platforms that you use, the middleware, the models, but it also applies to data. So today you may have this data source that you're using, and it's good enough, it's pretty good. Over time, you're going to be adapting it and improving it. But you also find like, oh, there may be this other data source over here that's actually much better, and then I can use this instead, or use it to supplement what I already have, because it just makes a richer, better, greater context. And a key part of this is building in this continuous feedback loop. Okay, we give this data. we get these results. We make this tweak to the data and change the context or how we understand it, or we're supplementing it with another set of data. How is that changing our results? And then also being able to scale AI over time in phases. So you can anticipate we're going to bring this amount of data in right now, and then we're going to scale that and add this other set of data over time. We're going to get some external data to supplement that even. So build AI data in phases instead of waiting for it to, again, all be perfectly available for you to get going. All right. One very last point to, again, just summarize all of this. Again, AI success isn't about hoarding the data, making it put into one place. It's being able to use it and access it and make it valuable for real business impact. I'm going to say that again, for real business impact. Again, a lot of the strategies that I see out there today for AI are basically a long list of use cases. That is not a strategy that aligns AI against your most important business value that you want to create. So if you can prioritize which are the fastest ways to get to value, which are the AI applications that are going to have the greatest impact, that are going to scale quickly within your organization, that you're going to invest in scaling, because that means driving adoption within your organization. If these are the things, if these are the top applications that you want to derive value from, then what is the data you need to get to have to drive this and to do it over time? So that is my main take for today, is that don't wait for data to be perfect, for data to be clean before you start using it. Understand what is the most important data, figure out how to get it to that minimally viable data, to the point where you can use it to get some decent results, and then commit to improving it over time. This is all about speed to value, speed to impact. And again, I think it's such an important concept to understand that you cannot, it's impossible, and it's just a not achievable goal to have perfect, clean data. So make do with the data that you have, understand the context, understand the biases, understand why it works or doesn't work, and do the best that you can with that, knowing that it's going to have to change and improve over time. All right, so that's what I have for today. Next week, I'll be talking about what are the top questions CEOs and their boards should be asking about AI. I wanted to talk about this because I do have a short list of questions that executives can ask. And I constantly say that it's not about leaders having all the answers. It's about being able to ask great questions. So I have a list of great questions that you can give to your executives, or if you are one of these executives or board members, the questions you should be asking the organization to be able to answer around AI. So again, it is not about having all of the answers, just be able to do that. All right, I think that's it for now. Again, I don't see any other, a couple other quick comments. Jay, thank you very much. You're very welcome. And Jay Johnson here has a great little point. Data curve towards transaction provides tactical value, not strategic value. So again, being able to look at, again, not just only the transactions, but also how the transactions altogether provide meaning to that strategy. So again, I do feel that if you know what you're trying to achieve with your AI applications and solutions, being very clear about the business value and then looking for the data instead of saying, I have all this data, what can I use it for? Again, always start with that business value you want to create. All right, I think thank you very much for joining. Arun also has this, makes sense. Thanks for sharing. Thank you for joining. Again, I'll see you all next week where we'll talk about questions that CEOs should be asking. Until then, take care. Stay safe out there. Bye-bye.